So let's bow in, everybody. And welcome to the Buddhist Path Awakening course. We're going through the profound treasury of the Ocean of Dharma by Chögyam Trungpa. And I think we'll just start in. Barry's going to be doing the first chapter tonight. So anything that we need to announce before this? I can't think of anything, Barry. Nope. All right.
All righty then. And John, remember to put it in speaker view for the recording.
Oh, good. Yes.
Okay, spotless life. In this reading, we're moving from the formal sitting meditation to meditation in daily life. Or more accurately, sitting meditation and post-meditation become just different activities in your practice. And for practice, no longer really starts and ends. It just becomes a natural part of life. I'd like to say at the onset that many times in a Q&A session after a class, the question will come up, well, this is all great and whatever, but what about real life? Well, this is the answer, what we're talking about now. The heart of meditation practice can pervade all of life on the cushion and off. He says, post-meditation practice or meditation in action is an intrinsic discipline and an integral part of meditation practice. Post-meditation is talking about meditation in daily life. Now, sitting meditation on its own can have many benefits. It can be very helpful in calming yourself. It can be kind of a vacation from all the stress of our complicated, nasty lives. And then you stand up and step away from the cushion and back into that life. He says the practice of meditation is not so much concerned with the hypothetical attainment of enlightenment, but with leading a good life. And in order to learn how to lead a good life, a spotless life, you need continual awareness that relates with life constantly, directly, and very simply. So you might say that post-meditation is where the rubber hits the road. That sitting practice is where real understanding is developed. That what you have learned in study and in teachings and in your contemplation, then in sitting meditation, can be integrated in a way, can become a genuine embodied understanding. And then in post-meditation is where that understanding can start to manifest in your daily life. So they're not such different practices in a certain way. But sitting practice is very necessary. You might say it's like studying a musical instrument or something. If you want to play the clarinet, well, you have to spend a lot of time getting familiar with the details. There's a lot of precision, a lot of intention there, and a lot of discipline of working with it a lot over time. And eventually you can start to actually make music. And that's how sitting meditation works with post-meditation. with practice as a part of our daily life, we can become more fully human in a way, more sane. Insanity in this case means stepping out of our habitual neurotic patterns of thought, being present, seeing and responding with clarity to whatever arises. He says, post-meditation is the basis of tremendous sanity. I like that. Tremendous sanity. It's better than just plain sanity. Pardon me. And now we come to walking meditation. And walking meditation is important. It's very useful in bringing meditation into daily life and can act as a kind of a bridge between sitting and daily life, or meditation and action. Now, in walking, because you're moving, there is much more visual stimulation and all kinds of physical sensations from your body and motion. It can be more distracting. This is great. I love walking meditation. It gives you practice in remaining present in the midst of the movements of life. Now, a certain amount of precision is necessary, just as it is in sitting meditation. And I think that everyone here has received the instruction for walking meditation. So, but I'll say a few things about that. That in walking meditation, we walk naturally, but just as in sitting, posture is key. It's very important to remain upright, have good head and shoulders. There can be a tendency sometime to walk with your head down. Remain upright. Now, I was a little puzzled by something he said in the reading about how it doesn't matter what you do with your hands. I found it's very helpful to follow the instruction we were given here of holding your hands together like this. Your right hand, your thumb goes down, your fingers wrap around it. A gentle fist, not a fist. The other hand covers. And then you hold this around your solar plexus, kind of level. And then walk. I find that this reduces a potential for confusion. Like, what do you do with your hands? Put them in your pocket. If you let them hang by your sides or put them behind your back, there can be a tendency to sort of encourage, looking down or something. So holding your hands here, I recommend it. I think it helps with mindfulness, with remaining really present. In any case, another element of this is that you're walking, there needs to be precision there, but it should be relaxed, spacious, relaxed. There should be a real panoramic awareness. And also, going from sitting to walking meditation is something that can be done mindfully also. Just as in sitting meditation, it's best if you don't just plop down. And in the same way, you don't just jump up and begin walking. So when walking is announced, maintain your posture, take a moment, and then stand up with awareness of the movement of your body and the space around you. And check your posture, relax, and begin walking. Now, yeah, he mentions interesting effects can come from walking. I would just say that the thing that can happen with walking meditation is might start developing a kind of fascination with figuring out exactly how to put your feet down. Like, should your foot go down heel first or toe first, or there can be a concentration of that type. Well, that's just a different kind of thinking. So relax, keep it simple, relax and walk naturally. And whatever thoughts come up, label it thinking and return to the technique. Return your attention specifically to the sensations of walking. Feel it, and thoughts will dissolve. He talks about mindful speech. It means speaking mindfully. When speaking, pay attention and be respectful of the environment and to whoever you are addressing. Pause for a moment and take in the environment. Is the person you're speaking to distracted, preoccupied, or are they attentive? And relax and continue to stay present with the person you're speaking to. As their attention started to wander, maybe check in with them. And take some care with what you say. It's really good not to just sort of blab out whatever happens to come into your mind. Also, there can be a momentum in speech that you just keep rolling along and ignore any interference. Like the person across from you is now looking at their phone, but you just keep talking anyway. And they're nodding and going, but they're not really hearing you. Don't be afraid of pausing. They call it dead air in the radio business. If you're searching for a word, be silent until it comes to you. Now, he says in the reading here, the idea of post-meditation is to develop something out of your sitting practice that continues. And it's natural to find that mindfulness is seeping into daily life. I know that several people here that I've spoken to have remarked on this, that you begin to find yourself coming back during your normal activities. So mindfulness, being awake to everything, becomes more natural and familiar. And sitting can become less special or separate. Now, in daily life, there is a certain amount of precision implied here. He uses the phrase on the dot. He says, in terms of post-meditation practice, being right on the dot means to be present in every waking moment. It's a good image to think of, being on the spot. What we're developing here is the ability to remain here, in the moment, on the dot, every waking moment of our life. So we're awake, taking in everything with clarity. And life can become vivid, interesting, full of exquisite beauty and sharply felt pain. It's great. This experience is something that develops as we progress along the path to enlightenment. So there is an aspirational aspect to this. And there's no need to be heavy-handed or to try to work really hard at creating that experience for you. This comes from simply coming back, just as in sitting meditation, coming back again and again. He says mindfulness practice is not just about what is happening to you individually and personally, It is about how much you are going to transmit your sanity and your insanity to the rest of the world. So this is related to the idea of becoming a good person, a full human being. At this point of the reading, he talks about the syllable ah. And this is something that I would like to leave to John to talk about, because this didn't quite gel for me what he was saying here. So I'm going to skip over. Now, in daily life, I mean, in walking meditation and in sitting meditation, when your mind's particularly active, it can be very useful to actually label thoughts like thinking. And he recommends that here in the reading. But in daily life, just going about your normal activities and coming back from dreams, drop labeling of thoughts. The practice becomes more about simply coming back. You could say snapping out of it and just having good head and shoulders all the time. Be aware of how you're holding yourself. But don't go nuts and don't worry about technique. Work with whatever you find and be open to whatever experiences come up. If you wander off into mental gossip, come back. Relax, take it all in, all of it. What are you seeing, hearing, smelling? What is your body up to? And he says, try to transcend embarrassment. Take pride in being a human being and a practitioner. That kind of positive arrogance is completely acceptable and good. Maintain that proud state of existence. Okay. So in meditation or wakefulness in daily life, just as in sitting meditation, when you are off in your thoughts, there is a kind of a spark that happens that alerts you to the fact that you're lost in thought. And that's when you can come back. He says, he talks about that. So some kind of spark has to take place. Just be there very precisely. And after such flashes of wakefulness occur, just forget them, disown them. Don't try to retain those flashes. When something else comes up, forget that as well. Be on the spot, but not on your tiptoes. So there again, we're not trying to achieve a certain state and not trying to hang on to some experience or trying to recreate it through force of will or something like that. It always comes back to that very simple thing of becoming aware of what your mind's doing when you're thinking and when you're present. He also talks about indulgence. He says indulgence is very much the challenge of meditation and action. It can be that in several forms. It can be that after sitting practice, you feel like now you deserve a break. So dive into pleasant distractions and veg out, maybe social media, online games, or take a nap or something. So some discipline is needed, just as it is in sitting meditation, but don't overdo it. And overdoing it is another side of indulgence. of pushing too hard, of adopting a formal, rigid attitude and taking it all a little bit too seriously. Self-righteousness. I'm special because I'm being mindful. I'm a super meditator. So moderation is the key. And when that voice reminds you that maybe this isn't the best use of my time, don't blow it off. Listen to that voice and come back to this. He says a total environment of practice is very important. Once you experience that environment of totality, that environment echoes back on you. I'm going to skip a little bit of this here. Okay. It's important to let go of viewing meditation as something special. It's just you in your body, sitting, breathing, watching your thoughts. And it is the same you that stands up after sitting practice and goes on with the next activity in your day. So there can be a sense of continuity. Continuity. This requires discipline, of course, just as sitting does. He says, the purpose of discipline is to develop a fuzzy edge between sitting and non-sitting, between eating and sitting, or sleeping and sitting. And I think he goes on to say, or sitting on the toilet and sitting. And he also brings up a point here. He says, it is a natural cultural habit, particularly in the Western world, to look for a change of mood so that every event in your life is a surprise. Now, frankly, I had never thought about this before reading it here, but it's very interesting. It's a little more subtle. It's making things special, that now you're going to sit down and eat something, that this is like an event of some sort. And making things special in that way then implies that the rest of life is just ho-hum or worse. It can be another way that we look for an exit from the routines of daily life. He says, in this approach, you never face life. Not only is it pathetic, it drives people mad. And yeah, it drives people mad because it's an expression of our neurotic thoughts. Creating these little ceremonies strengthens the belief that life sucks and we need relief. But how about this? We could embrace boredom, settle down, relax, open our eyes to all of life. There is constant change in every moment of our awareness, a never-ending vivid display of all of our thoughts and sensations. So we're talking about post-meditation or meditation to daily life. We're actually talking about all of life. And well, let me backtrack slightly here. This business of celebration, let me say that there's nothing wrong with celebration, that demonstrating genuine appreciation is totally cool. In fact, celebration is a part of many tantric practices. But it's the idea of breaking out pieces of life to make them special. It's like forcing a fake smile. he says we have lost the meaning of celebration and ceremony by holding those little ceremonies, which are simply attempts to cheer ourselves up. So, our practice is about the way we experience life, all of it, how we relate and respond internally and externally. That's really the point here. I would just going to add one more thing he says in the reading here, which is good. The practice of meditation is not so much concerned with the hypothetical attainment of enlightenment, but with leading a good life. In order to learn how to lead a good life, a spotless life, you need continual awareness that relates with life constantly, directly, and very simply. And I would just add that, after all, if enlightenment occurred on special occasions while meditating in a certain way and then evaporated, it would be just another event in the rearview mirror. So we could add that to our internal narrative, the legend of I, and I became enlightened. And that narrative isn't real. So sitting meditation is a very important part of the practice, is necessary, and so is post-meditation practice. And there you have it. John?
Thank you, Barry.
You're muted. John, you're muted. Oh,
Hello, everybody. These are two very different chapters. I'm going to say a few words more about the one that Barry just covered. Post-meditation, so-called, is almost a misnomer. Really, the point of meditation is to bring it from the cushion into your daily life. That's where it's most important. And in fact, at some point, a person might stop sitting altogether because meditation pervades their whole life. It's ironic in a way that it's called post-meditation, jetop in Tibetan. And it's really the point. At one point he says, Trungpa says, sitting meditation without post-meditation is like the sun without brilliance, a king without a court. It's the natural development of your sitting. If you only sit and don't carry your meditation practice into daily life, it's totally incomplete. So, and yet, taking meditation into daily life is very difficult. It takes a lot of training because we're so habituated to the triggers that we experience in our daily life, sights, people, all kinds of events that trigger us into dream. These triggers are absent when we're sitting on the cushion to a certain extent, or a larger extent, which makes it easier to be mindful on the cushion. But the whole point of this path is to take what we're learning on the cushion into daily life. The cushion is like a training session. He calls it basic training to produce a good soldier, or cooking school to produce a good cook. The point is not to stay in school forever, but to actually become a good cook. or whatever it is going to be, a good, awake human being, a Buddha. I'm not sure that everybody here has had walking meditation instruction. And if you haven't, please ask for it and we'll give it to you, especially in the morning sessions, if you come to a morning meditation session. It actually comes out of the Zen tradition, the idea of walking meditation. It's not there in the Tibetan. Trungpa Rinpoche went to Tassajara back in around 1971 and watched Sesshin, which is the month-long practice of meditation that people do in the Zen tradition. And he saw them doing walking meditation, which is called Kinhin. And in that you have this mudra, this posture of your hands at your chest like this. And he liked it so much that he adopted the whole thing, gave it a different flavor perhaps, but brought it into his approach to teaching. And he renamed it Datun. Datun is Tibetan for month-long period. And we began to do datuns, month-long periods of sitting and walking meditation. And in those periods, you even do a ritual form of eating called oryoki, which is a Japanese word, comes from the Japanese Zen tradition. And we brought that in wholesale. And we all started learning oryoki, which is a ritual form of eating. And the reason that you're doing a ritual form is because you can use it as a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice. So the whole point is that we're developing our mindfulness in kind of a lab situation, on the cushion, walking. And the point is to be able to take it out into daily life. And the things that we're developing are awareness, the ability to come back from dream into awareness in this present moment, seeing this world that we move through stripped of our preconceptions as it is, as they say in the teachings. You know, you walk down the street and you see someone who reminds you of someone else, and suddenly you're reacting to that person as you would to the person they remind you of. Never mind that they're a totally different person. And then you might actually meet that person and find out they're totally different. We do this all the time. We lay our preconceptions on our life experiences, and meditation is among other things, the process of cutting through those preconceptions and seeing the world stripped of these value judgments, these for and against, plus and minus, good and bad. And they call that faculty the development of prajna, wisdom that sees the world as it is, and the phrase in Sanskrit for as it is tatata, as it is. And then the other part, the other major part, is to open one's heart to the world and to stop seeing the world as an I, other, self-aggrandizement proposition, but to actually allow things to be as they are and to react and to resonate with them as they are. And so as we begin to take our meditation practice off the cushion and into daily life, it's a real challenge. Walking meditation is kind of a bridge. We're sort of halfway between the sitting meditation on the cushion and then meditation in action. Meditation in action is another term that it can be substituted for post-meditation. That we're actually going meditation in action. We're bringing it into our lives. So then, against all odds, the next chapter that we're talking about is all about sitting meditation. It's about the 9 stages of shamatha. Shamatha is a practice that one does, and we're not doing it really in this context, Rinpoche moved us past that pretty fast. But there are tremendous advantages and benefits from the practice of shamatha, and you never give up shamatha practice altogether. It's really a part of and embedded in the later practices, especially vipassana, which is what we do, awareness practice. And in fact, what we're practicing is mindfulness awareness, shamatha vipassana. But shamatha really is the practice of focusing one's mind one-pointedly on an object. The typical objects that are used are the breath. And when you do shamatha using the breath as an object, you are doing it sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed, most likely. It could conceivably be done with the eyes open, but it's rarely done that way. And it is the endeavor to focus your mind one-pointedly on the object. That means that what you're doing is you're coming back from dream. Sorry, difficulty with my phone. So what you're doing is with shamatha, is you're coming back from dream into awareness in the present moment, and you're using an object to do that. In Buddhism, the most common object is the breath, although you can also use mantra, especially in the Hindu tradition. Mantra is used, and in fact, you can use absolutely anything. You can use a statue that's sitting in front of you, or your pen, or whatever you like. And you're bringing your awareness back from dream into awareness of that object. And shamatha has three main benefits. And then we're going to go into the 9 techniques which describe other benefits. But the three main benefits are, one, that for a person who's never meditated, you get an idea of the extent to which your mind is lost in thought. Most people just walk through their lives continually thinking, and they think that that's what they should be doing. Thinking all the time. Planning their days, planning their activities, evaluating their lives and the lives of others around them, and more. So shamatha the first benefit is that you get a sense, you get an understanding, an actual experience of the extent to which we spend our lives lost in dreams. Second benefit is that you get a rest from the anxiety that's contained in thought. And the third main benefit is that you begin to develop the capacity, the ability to recognize that you're thinking, and in that moment of recognition, you are already back, and to appreciate that and be back. Now, the main overall picture of shamatha is that we achieve a more balanced state of being. And what that means is that we're not being impelled from one thing to the next by our thoughts because we're resting in awareness. In addition, you're developing a good personal relationship with your own mind. Now, what that means is this, that as we sit and we are working on focusing on the breath, or we're following the breath out into space, and we find that we've been dreaming, we can be very hard on ourselves. Uncompassionate. I'm a terrible meditator. I'm just lost in thought all the time. Darn it, I was thinking again. I blew it again, or whatever it might be. And that kind of self-criticism is something that needs to be given up. It's another thought. It's a thought having to do with self-aggrandizement, like I'm going to become a great meditator and then I'll get lots out of it, one thing or another, which is just another form of self-aggrandizement. It's not about awareness at all. It's just another dream. And those dreams are very pernicious, the dreams of self-judgment, self-evaluation. Because whenever you feel like you'd be doing it better, that means you've done it worse. And there's a self-attack involved in that. And that's one of the things we are giving up with shamatha. We give that up because it's another diversion. It's another way of not being present. And so we're beginning to develop a good relationship with ourselves through this practice. We're developing a kindness for ourselves, which is very natural. It's not like we have to try and be kind. It's simply that when we are being who and what we are, this awareness, then it's very balanced, it's very even, it's very kind in the sense that it's without self-attack. Developing compassion for oneself is what they call it. Sometimes they call it Maitri. In the Theravada tradition, it's metta, and it begins with oneself. Before you can extend it out to others, one has to be able to do it for oneself. So, in addition, meditation involves the coordination of body and mind. That's the word that he uses in this chapter. Elsewhere, he's called it the synchronization of body and mind. And what that means is very simple. It's this, that when we're lost in dreams, we're not here. You're not aware of this. When we're awake, here, in the present moment, right now, our awareness is right here, and this body is right here, part of it. The awareness and the physical world, which includes our physical body, are one. And that is the coordination of body and mind. That is the synchronization of body and mind. Whenever we come present back from dream into this moment, aware of whatever is going on in this room with our body in it, our mind and body are synchronized, coordinated. They're together. And that is one of the main points of shamatha. He says, the basic message of shamatha, your mind could be as adult as your body. Otherwise, if your mind is so adolescent that you have no control over it, you can't hear, much less absorb the teachings because you can't listen properly. So there are lots of techniques, lots of tricks, just sitting down on your cushion, doing it mindfully, realizing what you're doing instead of sort of throwing yourself down and saying, okay, now I'm going to meditate. But we actually take our seat mindfully. And when the gong rings and we get up, we do it mindfully. So there is this classic teaching, the 9 techniques of shamatha, which are called the 9 methods for placing or resting in shamatha. It's resting because right now you can be aware of this image on your computer screen without any effort. It's right here. It's doing it for you. These sounds are doing it for you. That's the resting quality. Effort comes in when you start thinking, I've got to make it better. I'm not doing it right. I'm doing it wrong. I don't make it better. It's all about I. But when I is gone and there's just this awareness of what's happening here, there's a resting. And that's the very essence of shamatha practice, the very essence of meditation altogether, is that resting. These 9 techniques are not particularly linear, although they look that way. When you practice, these are different experiences that will occur. They will arise as you practice, and your practice becomes deeper and more powerful. And so let's just start with some of them. Each has its own power, which is just another a sort of addition to describing it. The first one, resting the mind, sem, chukpa. Sem is a very big word that you're going to, if you keep studying Tibetan Buddhism, you will come across that again and again. Sem is the word for ordinary neurotic mind, the mind that is thinking, not enlightened mind. It's thinking mind. Sem. And jukpa means resting. So you sit on your cushion in your chair, you close off all external stimuli, turn the TV off or whatever, and you relax. You close your eyes and you put your mind on the breathing. Shamatha is a practice that can only be done on the cushion, really, because you've got your eyes closed for one thing. And even if you don't, if you keep your eyes open, but you're focusing one pointedly on an object, well, it's not a good way to drive a car. You could have a serious accident doing that. Just wouldn't be aware of what's going on in the environment around you. Vipassana, which we do in the mornings and in the evenings, that's the extension of shamatha, and it includes shamatha. It includes it because shamatha is mindfulness. It's coming back from dream to awareness in the present moment. And all meditation techniques have their foundation on that practice. The power that's connected with resting the mind here in the moment is simply that you've learned that it's possible. And you have a gratitude for the situation that has taught it to you, which is, as he puts it in this chapter, the lineage. The lineage. There's only one way these teachings are transmitted, and that is from one human being to another. It has to be that way, alive. There has to be that kind of heat and presence. The second one is continuously resting. It's just an extension of the first. It just means that coming back, bringing your mind back to awareness in the present moment, you can extend it. And you make this effort at the start of each practice session, and you can experience, as you do, being a good meditator. It produces confidence. You stretch your awareness out as much as you can, giving yourself encouragement. Again and again, the emphasis is on a positive, kind state of mind towards oneself. A negative state of mind is utterly counterproductive. It encourages neurosis, absent-mindedness, egotism. Part three, the third method, it's called literally resting. And just means that if you lapse into dream, you come back. Very simple. And he gives this wonderful example of the way, which is very traditional. It's the way parents draw their children back to eating their food. You remember? You say to your child, okay, here comes the airplane. It's coming down. Open your mouth. It's going to land, or whatever it might be. It might be the train, and you help the child bring their attention to the act of eating. Well, that's literally what we're doing here. We're bringing our attention back out of dream into what's going on in the present moment. And the power is the power of recollection, that just by remembering that you're supposed to be sitting on your cushion and practicing mindfulness, by remembering that, you bring yourself back. It's that simple. The fourth is called closely resting. And in this one, it's like you're beginning to get very, very precise. Even the slightest flickers of mind are seen as the arising of thought, and you're going to come back from that. You overcome them, and you return to the breath, no matter how small and subtle these thoughts are. And this is connected with the third power of recollection, that just by remembering that you are sitting, you can bring yourself back. The fifth is called taming. Literally means doing taming, Tulwachepa. And this is connected again to non-aggression towards yourself. You don't experience yourself as an obstacle, as a nuisance, as a failure, and you don't blame yourself, because that in itself is a departure from the meditation. You're going off into a dream, albeit a more subtle and seductive dream, the dream of self-criticism and the hope for achievement. So you let go of that and you rest in a kind of confidence that you can actually do it. The fourth power that's connected with this is the general recognition of decency, it's called. And that's simply that the results of this practice are good, that you're becoming a really wholesome, decent human being. Letting go of self-aggression, and in letting go of self-aggression, you also let go of aggression towards others. They go together. And you're achieving a kind of peace. In fact, shamatha literally means abiding in peace. Call it balance, call it peace, that we begin to feel that we're just resting in this very smooth, open, clear environment. And that there's tremendous confidence about that. It's like, wow, isn't this great? One can rest here and enjoy this. The sixth one is called pacifying. When you feel resistance to sitting, you ignore the anger and irritation and acknowledge the pleasure, the happiness that you feel from sitting. Now, the relief of being able to sit and deal with yourself is a real privilege. And this is also connected with the general recognition of decency, the benefits of the practice. That as you're practicing, you're beginning to realize that it really works. And not only that, but that it's wholesome for you and for others. Because to the extent that you're more wholesome, you're kinder and more available to help others. Now it's tempting to see these as sequential, but they're not. These different aspects will come as you practice. So for instance, you might start noticing that you're becoming much more detailed in the way in which you see little flickers of mind and come back from them. And at the same time, you might begin to feel much more confidence and ease, a kind of balance. So you'll move through these. The seventh is called thoroughly pacifying. And this means that you're beginning to deal now with the passions. And there are three main passions: hatred or aggression, desire or passion, lust, and indifference or stupidity. These are the three ways that I and other can interact. If you, as an ego person, look at another and see it as being dangerous, threatening, then you want to get rid of it. That's hatred. If you see it as being something that's going to make you happy, augment your existence, then you pull it towards you. That's desire, passion. And if it has no significance either way, then you're indifferent to it. And that's a kind of stupidity. And the seventh technique, thoroughly pacifying, there are three techniques for dealing with these things. With the heat of aggression, you put more emphasis on the out-breath. See, when you're practicing shamatha, you're working with both the out-breath and the in-breath. The breath goes out, and then it comes in. You might count, you might not count, it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of your choice. But dealing with aggression, you put more attention on the out-breath. It's a kind of relaxing, just like we do when we start the meditation and we take a deep breath and we breathe out. And we're expelling all that tension, all that aggression, and relaxing into space. So you work more with the out-breath. If you're distracted by passion or lust, then you work more with your posture. Put more emphasis on having a good posture, because it brings you back from these daydreams of passion, lust, whatever. And when you feel the dullness of stupidity or arrogance, then you try and bring the space of the hall that you're sitting in with you, into you, an awareness of the people sitting around you, if you are. A little difficult to do on Zoom, but we can do it nonetheless. The fifth power is the power of exertion, and that's really the fact that we're going to muster effort to do this. We're going to try to have a regular practice, because regularity is powerful. If one does it short and regular, it's so much better than doing it long and irregular from time to time. And that we're going to make the effort to do it, and we're devoted to the practice. We're not going to just sit there and run through the movie we just saw, or plan our day, or whatever it might be, the fantasy. 8 is one-pointedness. And again, this is an emphasis on detail, that you're going to see even the tiniest discursive thoughts and let them go and come back to awareness. And that you can do this not only on the cushion, but in the so-called post-meditation state. And sometimes this is what this means, is that you need, as you practice, to give yourself a break. You're too caught up in effort, so you take a break. It might only be a flash, or it might be several seconds, but you relax, and then you come back to the practice. And you might do this many times during a session. And finally, the 9th, resting evenly. And this is really the culmination of all of this. This is the quality, he calls it the quality of absorption, meaning that you're right here in the present, aware of the object of meditation, the breath, or the mantra, whatever it might be. And you're making friends with your practice. You're giving up this very cruel, self-judging, evaluating action, and instead relaxing and enjoying the awareness as it comes. He says, in the same way that swans naturally swim and vultures naturally roam in the charnel ground. Charnel ground is where you throw dead bodies when you can't afford to cremate them. You should let your mind be as it is. Letting your mind just see that object of awareness, the breath, and letting thoughts go as they arise. It's being kind to yourself, not torturing or blaming yourself. Is resting evenly. How important is that? Not torturing or blaming yourself. We tend to do it so much. We find that we've been dreaming, and we say, I'm a terrible meditator. I'm never going to get anywhere with this. Let that go. It's just more dream. It's more of egos. It's a very clever strategy of ego. Because ego is all about self-improvement and self-criticism, two sides of the same coin. He says here, you can be you in the purest sense. The purest sense means without any preconception, just right here. It's a marvelous thing, so relaxed, so confident. It's a kind of confidence. In Buddhism, they talk about confidence. The term is ziji in Tibetan. Great word, huh? Ziji. This confidence is not the confidence that says, I'm a great person. That's not confidence at all. If you have to say that, then you have this doubt that you're trying to assuage, to overcome. True confidence is completely silent. It means utter ease at being who you are, doing what you're doing. And that is what is being developed in this practice. He says, up to this point, you have never really been yourself at all, because you have always been too involved with your own little tricks of self-improvement. Finally, you could be yourself. It's being a decent human being whose mind and body are completely coordinated, who has given up the idea of self-improvement, of being better than oneself, better than anybody else, all of that out the window. And you can give your attention to everything. You have less aggression and less passion. Therefore, you are more inclined toward enlightenment. And this is the sixth power of familiarity. With practice, the mind can settle easily and naturally. It's so, so counterintuitive. We just do less and less. So we could have a discussion, and let me just change the view here. So we're taking questions and answers directed toward whomever you like. Questions and comments.
I have a question.
Meg.
Yeah, I know this question's been asked in so many ways, but when you talk about self-improvement and how we shouldn't be caught in the trap of self-improvement, and yet if you, just hypothetically, if you come from a really messed up background and you go through years of therapy just to get to the point where you can study this stuff, that requires some self-improvement just to arrive there. And I struggle with, when you say that we shouldn't self-improve.
Well, there's sort of two different definitions of self-improvement. One is that you've got things that are wrong and you're going to correct them, and then you'll be right. The other is that you give that proposition up altogether, because, in all good Western psychological traditions, in Buddhism, in coaching, the ultimate evil is regarded as self-attack. In Buddhism, they call it, I've talked about this, the king's spirit, the Gyalgon. In psychoanalysis, it's called the false self, the false ego. In coaching, they call it the saboteur. And the thing about that is that we think that the voice that is criticizing us is me, but it's not. It's been learned. It's been imported from outside. And that voice of self-criticism, self-attack, is very destructive. It makes us feel bad. And it impels us into self-improvement and makes us compare ourselves with others. And not only that, but when one is cruel to oneself in that way, then probably you're going to extend that out and do it to others as well. I'll give you an example that's pandemic. Many people have problems with their weight. And they're very, very self-critical and self-attacking about weight. I'm too fat. And when you do that, you do it to other people too. Oh, look at that person, he or she, they're grossly overweight. So we take the very self-criticism that we level against ourselves and we extend it out. This is about learning how to be kind to oneself. And that doesn't mean that you're sort of becoming a Pollyanna, believing some kind of great things about yourself. It means that you're willing to see and be who you are, truly. And each one of us is a very beautiful human being. And this is described in later teachings, by the way, in Buddhism, the true self, especially in Tantrism. It's described in what are called the 5 Buddha families. Some people here might be familiar with them. But the way in which we manifest as our true selves, our enlightened selves, is very beautiful and very different and varied. Each one of us, we're like snowflakes, but there's certain commonalities. So it's really a matter of developing a kindness to oneself, giving up this idea that there's something wrong with me. Because the idea of self-improvement, the flip side of that, and it has to be there, is the idea that there's something wrong. In good psychological traditions, in coaching, you're taught you don't offer the person a way to improve themselves because that implies that they're broken. You don't try to fix the person, the therapist, or the coach, because that implies that they're broken. This is really about wholesomeness, about discovering our natural, innate beauty and resourcefulness as human beings. And the Buddhism very much affirms this, the whole doctrine of Buddha nature. And what it says is that fundamentally we are all Buddha. We're awake and we are perfect. But we have become lost in dreams of self-criticism, which automatically implies self-improvement. And we need to identify that and let it go and begin to identify and feel our true natures. I'm not trying to sell a bill of goods here. It's something that each one of us has to experience. And the more we experience it, the more we're drawn to it. And you experience it through practice, starting with sitting on the cushion, which is kind of the laboratory, situation for practice. And then as quickly as you can, extending the awareness and compassion that you experience on the cushion out into your daily life in what is ironically called post-meditation. Ironically, because really that's where meditation lives, is in the world. I don't know, want to say something, Meg? I can't hear you.
No, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember having a friend, he died. He's much older than I. He was one of 6 fellows of the American Psychiatric Association. And he was a brilliant psychoanalyst, psychologist, taught at Columbia, everywhere. And he mainly did group therapy. He was much loved. And he distinguished, he said, bad psychology, psychotherapy tells the client that you're broken and we need to fix you. Yeah. Tully, did you have something?
John, a thought came to mind, the story that you told one of our prior sessions about, I forget the guy's name, Tom or somebody, but this goes back to the days with the pygmy days or whatever in Boulder and so forth. And this was a guy who committed suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was a service for them. And then Trungpa during the service said, Tom, or whatever his name is, about now he's learning that what he did wasn't such a good idea. But what I was wondering is if we could put the movie in reverse, and Tom, or whatever his name is, and you recognize that Tom is got problems. All right, Tom's associated with Trungpa and the rest of that. Maybe Tom's meditating, but something's not working. What would you have told Tom, or done anything with Tom at all?
Yeah, he just kept a low profile, Tom did. And I didn't realize how unhappy he was. He must have been. And I would have spent more time with him. And I would have, tried to be his friend and encourage him to talk about what was going on in his mind, because that's a way of diffusing it to some degree and of coming to a more positive view of himself. But I just hadn't spent enough time with him. He was under my.
Well, I was just trying to maybe pick up on what Meg was talking about. Somebody who has a difficult upbringing or whatever, and
Yeah.
if ambition on their part, on the part of the person who's had a some difficult experiences in life, if ambition on their part is not the answer, then sort of looking at it from a different angle, what can others of us, if anything, do to help? But I think what I liked about what you just said is get Tom to talk.
Yeah.
And maybe help him see a different perspective on himself. I don't know, Meg, if I'm being helpful at all, but I'm trying to be.
Are there many people
Go ahead, John.
Need our help? Many people need our help. But the main thing that we can do, I mean, sure, we want to help other people, absolutely. But especially we need to be able to be kind to ourselves, to develop that kind of kindness here. That's where it starts. And when you begin to experience the release from personal self-criticism, then you can be much more of benefit to others. I think to the degree that we each can experience this kind of self-compassion, then we can be truly available and more of help.
Great, thank you, John.
Kelly. Thanks, John.
Yes.
Somebody else.
I guess I find too, connecting to what Meg said, I guess maybe it's a question of semantics, but maybe it's not improving, but changing the narrative in my mind, that habitual narrative that I grew up with, and I'm beginning to change it, and it's and I'm questioning it, and I guess so maybe it's not necessarily improving, but I'm becoming friendlier with the voices in my head, and that's been helpful, and changing, just having a better relationship, I think, with the voices in my head. So maybe it's not improving, but it's a more comforting and supportive relationship.
And while you're doing that, we appreciate you, your intelligence, your warmth. And to the extent that each one of us can open ourselves up to that from others, we begin to appreciate ourselves too. Yeah. It's wonderful, Mary. Karen Sue.
What I was just struck by and was to get Tom to talk meant that someone was listening to him. And when I know that someone's really listening to me, that's a really special moment for me. So that was what I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Robert. And then Steph. Robert, you need to, yeah, there you go.
Thank you. I'm becoming increasingly more aware that everything in advertising is telling us that we need something we don't have. Everything. It's trying to get us to buy something that we don't already have. And what do I want out of this whole thing in the long run is really to be at peace. Peacefulness. That's what I'm looking for. I think most people are. Even if people want to kill something off, they want to create some kind of peace out of the whole thing. So, you know, and there's a quotation I remember I was told about, and it really got me, you know. And it's a quote by Plato: "Those who tell the story rule society." This is from Plato. They knew back then. And the story I tell myself is running a whole game. And I think it's me that's telling the story. But it's always something from the past that keeps coming up. And what you said something earlier about, it gets to a point of not letting go anymore of this journey. I remember that Ram Dass, in his book Be Here Now, he had a lot of illustrations with captions, and he's sort of like a moth being drawn to a flame. You know, eventually the moth is absorbed into the flame and it's gone. It's in the book Be Here Now, very beautiful book by Ram Dass. This path never ends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steph, you had something to say.
Well, I did, but listening to what Robert just said about how we are the stories we tell ourselves is just, I'm just digesting that thought, which I think is really profound and really true. I guess what I'm trying to find the balance of is this whole treatise here is an instruction manual, and it's only the first volume of a 3-volume set. Yet we are admonished throughout it to not judge ourselves, do not be critical of ourselves, have no ambition, have no expectations, avoid the 3 poisons, don't want, don't hate, don't be indifferent. So I'm wondering what's left. Where do I stand? I'm reading this book and I'm trying to absorb it, and I'm listening to you and all of you. And yes, I do want to change something within me about the way I interact with my environment, with the way I think about stuff, with the storyline. But I shouldn't want that. But So I guess what I'm asking is, can you give me some guidance in that direction? Is how do we go about this without wanting it?
Without wanting what?
Without wanting to progress, to change, to maybe improve isn't the right word. Maybe change is a better word. Maybe that's the way to think of it. We're not trying to better ourselves. We're trying to change.
I think it's talking about not trying to better ourselves by some external standard that we've learned from our parents or our peers, but rather what this path is about is increasing appreciation for the beauty, power, and vividness of this very transient life. And really, especially, when we get, the first path, stage of the path right now, this path, where that volume that you picked up, the so-called Hinayana stage of the path, is about learning how to become more wholesome and less self-attacking, and to give up self-attack, which has its flip side, which is attacking others. And so one ceases to do harm. And instead one becomes much more aware. But then as it goes on, these teachings are, certainly we're driven as we progress along this path by a desire to improve in some way. And yet, what the path is really about is giving that up. It's that the farther we go on the path, the more that we realize that what we were seeking was here. It's just that we weren't looking. We weren't seeing it. We were so absorbed in fear and hope and thoughts of self and other that we couldn't appreciate the beauty of this life as it arises now. That beauty is described in the teachings that are about to come as Shamatha, emptiness, and luminosity, Prabhasvara, it's called in Sanskrit. And they say that this world, if you have the eyes to see, this is tantric, is a heavenly mansion filled with gods and goddesses. But we, because of our being lost in the dreams of unhappiness and self-criticism, see this as a veil of tears, this world, full of very different beings than gods and goddesses. So really, another aspect of this is that we have a lot of work to do in order to sort of turn around these tendencies that we've developed. And yet the irony is that as we go further and down the path, we're giving up that work more and more, because that work always implies that we have something better to be. And that very idea of betterment is a way of sort of looking down, looking negatively on what we already have. It's not good enough. And so the path is very much a matter, it's sort of a self-destruct path. The further we go, the less there is to do. And the very end of the path, they describe as being total relaxation into this world as it is now, and appreciation of that it arises so beautifully and vividly. And yet it's full of all kinds of things like our deaths, that'll come too. So there's a kind of irony in this path that what we're struggling to achieve is something that we're giving up. When you look at the stages of the Mahayana path, which is the next volume, it's organized into volumes here. Those stages, they're called the 10 bhumis, the 10 stages. Each one of them involves a giving up, a further giving up of ambition, and a further recognition that what we were seeking is already here.
So it's sort of similar to the idea that, well, I was talking about the importance of the out-breath being the important one, that the letting go is what brings you back
Exactly.
to the totality that you always were, and that just got tangled up in the life stories that you tell yourself that divert you from that.
And that we've been told, by the most powerful source of those of self-doubt comes from our parents. They're passing on theirs to us. We love our parents, or maybe, but they're the most powerful voices just because that's the way human beings work, from childhood. But you can get it too from peers and other places.
It is getting late, folks.
Ooh, I lost track of the time. It is indeed. So we should end, unless anybody has something really burning that they want to say. I'm really looking.
Hi.
I want to say this, that these teachings are kind of self-destruct. In other words, there's a Zen saying that you might keep in mind. In the end, there is no Buddha, there is no Dharma, there is nothing profound. That's a very Zen saying. That's where the teachings go. But we have to tread that path. There's really no choice. So friends, we should end, and we'll end with the dedication of merit. I'm going to put it up where we are. What we're doing is we're dedicating any benefit that we've gotten